Caitlin, I can't help but think it's a cheap political stunt designed to silence the mayor and the governor, weaponizing and frankly corrupting the Department of Justice. As a former federal prosecutor, all of us know that you don't announce an investigation of a mayor and a governor simply because they want their agents and investigators to be involved in potentially prosecuting a crime that occurred in their state and city. What's happening here is a cover-up, blatantly a cover-up, because the federal government, the Department of Justice, wants to exclude state and local investigators because they're afraid they're going to uncover the truth. And a lot of this truth is out there for everyone to see in the videos, but they are trying to silence the governor and the mayor. It's an act of retribution. It demeans the Department of Justice beyond words.
Is there any precedent that you can think of for a subpoena like this? What we've told has been issued by a grand jury. Apparently, Mayor Walz and Mayor Frey and Governor Walz have not yet gotten it. Is there any precedent for them to get a subpoena like this, in your view?
There is no precedent whatsoever for top public officials, the governor and the mayor, who are simply trying to fulfill their responsibility, seeking justice, to receive a subpoena. And your point that they haven't yet received it is very telling.
Why?
Normally, a subpoena is issued secretly by the grand jury, and it's served before any public disclosure so that there's no attempt to avoid the compulsory process to produce evidence, either to leave the jurisdiction or to destroy documents. Most prosecutors want that subpoena served before anybody knows about it. So your sources have told you about it. I'm not asking you about your sources, but the fact that they allowed this information to be disclosed is very telling. It's not a serious prosecution.
So what do you, if you say it's not a serious prosecution, what do you think that Mayor Frey and Governor Walz should do when they get these subpoenas?
They should go to court. They should seek injunctions against it. But you know what's also very telling is the governor has really urged peace, peaceful protests, turning down the temperature. Donald Trump is escalating, dialing up the heat in his words and now in this supposed investigation.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the comments that Walz and Frey have both made. Obviously, Walz was saying things like, we're not asking ICE not to do ICE things. He said we want them to stop the unconstitutional conduct that is invading our streets each day. We saw, obviously, Walz giving his address this week where he was saying, you can pull out your phone, you can record these agents, you can call 911 if they want. Do you believe anything that they have said or done would amount to criminal interference in federal law enforcement?
It isn't interference, it isn't obstruction, it isn't in any way impeding a lawful investigation. It is public statements, First Amendment expression protected by the Constitution by a public official. Again, I repeat, it can't be repeated too often. Their police and their prosecutors, state and local, have a relationship to the community that would actually enhance a investigation and prosecution. When I was a federal prosecutor, we welcomed state and local police being involved. Why? Because they're trusted by the community. They have sources. They also were on the scene first. They secured that crime scene. They collected evidence. So this kind of interference with the prosecution is by the federal government, not by state or local.
What does it say about the Justice Department when we find out something like this, and it's actually not that surprising? I wasn't that surprised tonight when we heard from sources tonight saying, yeah, they are under investigation. And I think that's because of what we've seen with Tish James here in New York, or the Fed chair, Jay Powell, something that even Republicans were critical of this week. What does that say to you about where the Justice Department stands tonight?
It says to me that the Justice Department has lost its way. It's out of control. It also says to me that my Republican colleagues on the Judiciary Committee and the Homeland Security Committee ought to get some backbone, ought to grow a spine, stand up to the president in the way that the people of Minnesota are doing, not just for their own sake, but for the country's sake, because the Department of Justice has such immense power. If you are ever a prosecutor, you know that beginning an investigation, naming someone in indictment, has an impact on that person's life forever, even if they're acquitted eventually. There is probably a good part of the country that is thinking right now, well, the governor and the mayor must have been doing something wrong, but the fact is they have been doing everything right here.
What would you say to someone, because I can hear already, just knowing, after covering Trump for as long as I have, they would say, well, look how many times they indicted Donald Trump. Look how many times they made him go through cases. I mean, what would you say if that was their argument tonight?
Well, Donald Trump lost a number of those cases. Others were never brought to trial. But the comparisons are inapt because what we have here is the announcements of investigations, not of cases where there's actually some action in court. Whether it's Powell or my colleagues, Senators Slotkin and Kelly and others, or now the governor and mayor, they are using the immense power and stature of the Department of Justice and degrading it, costing it credibility. And I think they have no evidence to justify what they're doing. Whereas in the Trump cases, like it or not, there was a lot of evidence.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, thank you for joining us here tonight on this Breaking News.